Saying aye.
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 All opposed? All right. All right, we can skip A, I guess, Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So we've talked about that. We can do the same thing there. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we
Defer consideration.
blanked out on, it's getting late.
We didn't have
Defer
public-
the-
Gotta have public comment on that.
Are y'all going
Oh, we do need to have public comment?
to, public comment,
public comment.
presentation, anything?
Yeah. Is it time?
Presentation first?
Is there any public comment on the Parks Plan?
Yes, I think
There
there
is?
is.
Okay, sorry, we'll cut somebody out of being able to talk.
I know, but the presentation.
Comment first or presentation?
Yeah, is there a presentation first? No presentation? There is presentation?
I'll keep it very brief.
Okay.
And he was still back there.
Like the previous speaker, I made a very long, hour-long presentation. Couple of comments I want to make. First, I congratulated Jerry. I thought this was wonderful. It's in our plan. This is exactly what's in our plan that says you need to start programming. You've got facilities, start using them. I was tickled pink to see this. I am going to give you a handout that is a very brief summary. I'm not going to go over it of the master plan findings, but it's the grouping that is important that I want to speak to you about just for 5 minutes.
When you presented before, you had a map of,
Your microphone.
when you presented before, you showed us just a proposed draft of a plan for Murphy Candler and maybe Blackburn. I don't see those, and I've tried to find those.
They're in the master plan report. There are 4. We did Murphy Candler, Linwood Park, Blackburn. They're not in this handout. They're in
Oh,
the,
but I printed out the plan.
they're in the appendix. They should be in the appendix.
All right, I'm going to look through it and see.
Okay, well, we can resend them out if somehow they missed. But the real keys I wanted to touch on, because I know the importance of public comment to you. We had 1,066 surveys responded, and I've passed out some of the key survey findings. I think that's, as an elected body, the public input section is something you really ought to read closely. The staffing recommendations, we've worked with Jerry since he's been hired and modified the org chart from the preliminary plan to the final plan. Table 6.3 is the standards. It tells you where you have facility deficits and surpluses. That's an important chart for you guys to look at. Okay. And then obviously the funding section, we talked about various ways you could approach pulling together the funding to do the packet. So, and the last thing, we also have a trails map in there. You're 14 miles short of trails. Your deficit is 14 miles, and we have recommended 13.5 miles of trails in the master plan. So we've given you routes that we think are doable routes in the master plan. But love to hear that you're working on the community centers. They need a lot of love. That's noted in the plan. You've already got funding in place, and you've started. So I commend you for everything you're already doing, and if you have any questions, I'll take them.
I have 2 questions. One first is just a quick comment to Marie that I heard that someone said the Parks and Rec plan that we have posted on our steering committee webpage doesn't have the appendix, all of the appendixes to it, so we may have a smaller version of it.
We can double check that.
Yeah.
I do not see the, okay.
We'll, if Susan doesn't have them, we'll retransmit them.
We'll just, we'll
Yeah.
double check that. The second comment is about the comment that Betsy made a little earlier on District 2. It's on the proposed trail service area analysis. We've got this blank area that doesn't have the shaded trail service area. Now, where's the love for District 3? That is all of District 3, and I assure you, District 3 is very interested in trails, and so it's something that,
Okay?
perhaps we can take a look at that, and I'd be happy to sit down with you and
Absolutely.
maybe some of the people in that area.
If you have ideas for additional, we're glad to add more.
Great, thanks.
I would also point out on that same map, because it keeps popping up in all the maps, about this proposed trail in Area 1. I know that it came probably from the DeKalb transportation plan, and somebody's got this idea for a trail, I'm here to tell you that goes through my backyard. And all of this is private property. And it's just astounding to me. Now, it does go along a creek, right here.
Burgundy.
And I'm, me and my neighbors are kind of shocked that nobody has said anything to us about, building a trail in our backyards, and it's all private property. So I don't know who.
We have not received
whose
it.
idea this is.
That came from a compilation of previous trail master
It's this
plans.
problem of you get one thing and it keeps getting handed down to the next person. And
I will,
I'm just
I
here
will
to tell you.
take those trails. You can move them down into that area too, there.
Well, you want them through your backyard?
Yeah.
Okay. well, Put them in Bates's backyard.
Right.
We welcome the comment, and but we have not gotten any comments like that about this map from any emails or anything, so,
Fire at my neighborhood then.
okay.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
The staffing, operations, and budget. I'm looking on this page, table 4.3. It's showing Brookhaven with 6 full-time employees and the staffing operating as 59% of the operating budget.
Yes, sir.
Besides Decatur, we're the highest percentage of staffing taking up our operating budget. Do we have 6 employees for the city employees for parks?
Funded positions.
Are they contractors or are they?
We have the Parks Director,
Right.
we have the Assistant Director, we have the Athletics Coordinator, we have a Program Coordinator, so that's 4. We have Raquel, the Administrative Assistant, and we have a part-time employee. So, yes.
But you're proposing a lot bigger
No, it's
in the
6.
future.
It's showing 6 here.
It's actually 5.5, but showing 6 slots.
Yeah, as you grow, yes, sir.
As you grow.
Somebody has 1.
Dunwoody is, Mr. Mayor, is the anomaly. You notice, these are metrics, and I'm glad you picked up on that. It's 59% of your operating budget, 55.8 of Alpharetta and Roswell, and 62% of Decatur. So you're not outside the norm spending 59% of your operating budget on staff. And actually, you're doing pretty well, I think, compared to Dunwoody, who has 1 park, and we did their study. They have 1 contract employee who's a full-time employee, and the rest are, everything is contract maintenance, contract trash collection, contract everything. So it doesn't really, their cost doesn't really reflect in their operational budget because it's not in Parks and Rec. They only assign 1 person to Parks and Rec budget. So it's just so you understand, they're spending a lot more than what's accounted for in their Parks and Rec budget.
Yeah, just a little surprised to see what looks like 5.5 or 6 employees in our Parks Department when we're, we want our directors to be the city employees, and we want to use as much contracting as possible. I just a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah, I think you're
I know
seeing.
I know about a couple of these, but I just didn't realize they're.
Right. But as you go forward, I think your opportunity for part-time, like all these programs, these will all be carried out by part-time staff and.
I see that. I see that.
So, now, to be honest, we did recommend that your senior staff be city employees, not contract employees.
But we know that, the director of each department is, we're kind of following the model that those will all be city employees, but not so much when you get down the chain.
Yes, sir. But that's what you have.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Y'all see anything else in here? Our population was wrong on the table 4.5. It's 55,000 people.
51?
55 is showing,
Yeah. It's showing 55, but
right,
we're,
we're 51.
Right.
Anybody have any
I
comment?
like optimistic thinking, though.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's a traffic problem.
Yeah. All right,
Watch yourself.
is there a motion, or no public comment?
No, we do.
We do have some, all right.
Tim Nama,
Tim who?
Tim Nama, 1853 Duke Road, Brookhaven, Georgia.
Those are exhibits, you need to give them to the clerk.
No, these are my notes. But I will give an exhibit in a second. I wanted to make a couple comments on the parks plan. I think it's got a lot of good long-range potential to it. But I was very happy to hear Rebecca's comment about, it's time to get some things in action now. I would also like to request that you wait on making a decision on the long-range plan until District 2 has elected a representative. I don't think it's fair to our district to be penalized for not having representation on the council currently. The most damning part of the report that I read was that over 75% of our residents are utilizing parks in neighboring cities because the park facilities that we have now are just not up to snuff. And it's time to make some improvements in our parks. That was one of the promises that every one of us made when we were pitching cityhood to all of our friends and neighbors, that we were going to have useful parks that were safe and updated, and that we'd all be proud to use. And I think that that's something that's it's time to get in action. I have a specific list of requests for District 2 parks in our city. I have a copy for each of you. I don't know if I need to give it to you or give it to Susan.
Let her see them, and then she'll bring them to us.
All right. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Council will need to take at least one and make a couple of copies for the clerk and myself.
Does she
so-
not have one?
No,
Okay.
and I don't have one either.
I'm not going to give up mine.
Well, we'll just make a copy of one of yours.
You can make a
Somebody
copy of
can-
mine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Madison.
All right, any more public comment?
Betsy Eggers?
I know. Sorry. This is what I'm waking up at night worrying about, and that is that we may choose the wrong portion of the North Fork to build as our trial mile. And so I want you all to start thinking about this. Of the 3 miles of the linear park, when you look at where they built the belt line first, of that whole thing, that 2.5 miles that they put in goes from Inman Park to Piedmont Park. And it's safe, there's lots of people to populate it, and it's going to be successful. People can't wait for the rest of it to be built. When you look at the Buford Highway Plan, and they're talking about building the linear park of the trial mile behind a place where there's homeless, it's run down, there's no population to populate it, it may not be successful unless you pick the right spot to do the first trial mile, because you want it to have population and to be popular and to be safe. So just start thinking about that, of where the first place should be. Let's get other people involved that have looked at it and are looking at it in a marketing perspective, and not just, ooh, this is low-hanging fruit because this is a beat-up-looking place because it's where the Honey Baked Ham is, or the Suntan Plaza. You got to look at where it's going to connect and go all the way up to someplace else, and where it's going to be crossing over the river or not having to cross, because each time you cross, it's going to be expensive to build bridges. So just let's get the overall plan and then pick where it's going to be the most successful. I don't know where that is, but I just want to give you that thing to think about.
And the trial doesn't have to be a mile, right?
No, but she's making a good point, and that is this, and it's called out for in the Beaufort Highway Plan, the Parks and Recreation Plan, the Transportation Plan, looking at alternative modes of transportation, one being a trail. What we need to do, and her point is, we need to create the overall trail plan. And then from there, look at where we can accommodate access to the trail and where it can be safe and it can be heavily used, because we want a good demonstration of that so that we can get other partners to come on board and then to extend that. Now, is it a mile? Is it probably not? but we can show the first mile as the first segment and build it in pieces. And, we're going to be looking for partnerships. It's not all going to be on the city's dime. There are other venues and entities out there that we can tap into, and we do plan to do that. But we need the overall plan first. It's going to be very important, and we need to make the statement that the trail along the creek right now is privately owned, just as Ms. Williams said about another trail in her district. So not only is that privately owned, but the points of access to the trail are also privately owned. So this demands a partnership. But we can't sell the idea until we have a plan so we can show property owners how it's accessed and how they can be a participant in it.
Marie, I think you're making arrangements to have an upcoming meeting with Ed McBrayer at Path. And
Yes, I have
think-
called him, and I'm waiting for his return call, in
Right.
fact.
I think that's an invaluable asset to help us ascertain, as we go through planning this path, how we might want to look at where that first portion is.
Well,
I think he's already
yes.
been down this road, that's why I think it's.
Correct. And again, part of the budgeting process of what I'll be coming back to you on and asking you to set priorities, and I would think this would be a very high priority on your list. We need to have the overall plan. It's not just laying out the line of the trail, it's the cross-sections. What does it look like? What are the dimensions? What are the specs to build it? And then what is the maintenance plan? But the points of access are critical because we can't helicopter into the trail. So, and I don't want us to be reliant on just one source of funding or one entity. There are opportunities for others, and it looks good, from our standpoint to try and bridge a couple of those entities together and then show what we're going to be investing in it. It makes our applications much stronger.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much.
You betcha.
Thanks so much, Marie.
All right. Any more public comments?
Corey Self.
Dory? Yeah. Like the sandals.
Good evening. I will attempt to be short. Have just a couple points. I've not yet had a chance to read the entire report. I started reading through it today and spent far too much of my time and far too little time working. But I did have a couple concerns that came up. One, I was shocked at the chart in there that showed the lowest spend per capita of all of the comparison cities. When we, I did not write down what chart that was. Maybe our consultant could help us out, but
It was $5.30, $17.
I believe it was $17, and they said the median across Georgia was $77 per capita.
Ours will be higher.
I was shocked that it was as low as it is. I know that DeKalb County only spent $300,000, $400,000 maintaining the parks, and I understand that we've got significantly more than that at roughly $2.5 million, including capital improvements. Still, I would think that we would want to invest in our parks heavily enough that we would not fall out at the lowest per capita. I was also shocked at the emphasis on, or maybe it was my perceived emphasis on the involvement of the steering committee for the parks. I know over half of the committee personally. I've talked with several of the members. My understanding is that the involvement of the steering committee has really been more to listen to presentations from the consultant and then fill out a form providing feedback on that presentation. That, in my mind, is utterly useless, and we have people who are involved in the steering committee because they are involved and invested in their community parks. We should have had them giving those presentations. What would you like to see? What would your neighbors like to see? More so than a consultant presenting to that steering committee and then asking for feedback on the back end. And the final thing that really struck me was the amount of dollars, and I believe it's over a 10-year spend plan, but the amount of dollars seemed very disproportionately geared toward District 1. I understand no dollars are in District 4. There are no parks there currently. I believe Betsy has addressed the North Fork adequately, and by the way, Betsy, very glad you are here and leading that charge. I don't understand how you can have, I believe the figures were 20-plus million in District 1 parks over a 10-year period versus 3 million in the other two districts. Doesn't seem proportionate at all in my mind, and I would like to see that addressed. And then the final comment was just something Ms. Garrett made earlier, a comment she made about building the reserve. I don't want to see us build the reserve at the cost of park improvements. We need to focus on the park improvements and spend that money where we told the people we would through the incorporation efforts. Thank you.
Anybody else? That's it? All right, close the public comment section. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we close the public comment session.
Second?
Let's do it.
No, you don't have to move.
Yeah, we don't have to move that.
I've closed it.
Close it.
Motion for the.
I hereby close the public comments.
I move that we
Mayor
defer
won't do it, I'll
the,
do it.
I move that we defer the Parks and Recreation Master Plan adoption to the September 9th council meeting.
I second.
Discussion, I'll just say, this is a proposed plan. We haven't even gotten our clause into it as a council. This is a proposal. It's not set in stone. So any consternation about figures of where funding is going is all that's just what the consultants came up with and in concert with the steering committee. So we're going to have a strategic funding plan for all the parks, proportional to their size and their usage, and whether they're a passive park or an active park. Not every park's going to get the same, not every area is going to get the same amount of funding because there's different acreages in different areas and there are different uses. Some parks need maintenance or just cutting back brush. Some need new gymnasiums. Some need new playgrounds. Some don't have playgrounds. Some need new pavilions. So there's all different cost elements to all that. So once we get in and see what the needs are, then the funding will flow from what we see the needs are for everybody in Brookhaven, for all the parks and for all the acreage. So to expect that every park is going to be getting the same amount of money or that every area is going to be getting the same amount of money, it's just not realistic. It's going to be done according to what the needs are. And without regard to where the actual parkland lies. The parks don't know any boundaries. They don't know political boundaries. They just are there. Their land is there. There are 250-something acres of parks in Brookhaven, and I expect all of them to get attention.
Let me add one more comment that actually came out of the meeting that I had, citizen comment last night, that we need to print out all of these plans and put a copy, 1 or 2 copies in our lobby, 1 or 2 copies at the Brookhaven Library. And if there are some other places that we can think of that we can get these plans, that would be a very helpful thing to let people just come by and peruse these documents. They probably need to check them out because they're so big. But the more eyes on this, the better.
That's sort of the purpose for the meeting next week is, and I don't know if the consultants are going to be there or not, or if we can have them there. I mean, just to.
I could reach out to
There were
them.
actually some good questions last night at Bates's meeting with that. I wanted to be able to have citizens ask the consultants, because there may have been a good reason why they did something or didn't do something, and we just want to know what their reasons are, because they do have some expertise,
Right.
obviously, and that's why they're the consultants.
Right.
So, but I would like to have at least one of them there so they can answer some of the questions and reassure folks or have pause. So if that'd be helpful at that
Okay,
meeting.
I'll be happy to reach out to them. I would like to make a comment, regarding a point that was just made as to the reserve fund versus expenditures to the park.
Right.
Before we can save, we have to take care of business and provide the level of services that you all have adopted and approved for
Or
this
else we
city.
to be able to take care of our parks if we don't have a
Correct.
sound
But
financial
I
footing.
want to point this out because I know the community is very anxious to get moving on the parks. And within the last 2 weeks, we officially purchased the parks. Not all of them, but the majority of them. There's 3 still that are outstanding. We've been operating the parks since Labor Day weekend of 2013. And I remember sharing with you all when we talked about that, and we were bringing on the contractor to just perform maintenance, just to mow the grass, and I said, we are in triage mode.
Right. You did, yeah.
We took on all the parks that had neglect, and I'm not even going to say deferred maintenance, neglect. So there has been a tremendous amount of work just to, I would say, make the parks habitable. And you've heard me say this, and no disrespect to DeKalb County and, you know, whatever their issues were, that's in the past, you all own the parks now. But I've even said that in one of our gymnasiums, you needed a tetanus shot to use the restroom in there. We've made tremendous strides in trying to make those facilities habitable. We opened the pools, and my goodness, everybody was excited about that, and then a pipe burst. Then the splash pad doesn't work.
And
Then
the pump's on a jack.
Right, and then the bathrooms are just in a deplorable state.
Dripping
So we have been trying to attend to those matters so that the parks could at least be habitable. But I'm very proud to tell you all that you have spent, you know, right now in what's budgeted in your 2014 budget, almost $3 million, half of what we anticipate for the 2014 host.
Yeah, and I want to
And-
address that one, in concert with that. I mean, Mr. Corey's comment about what we promised for incorporation was that we would spend 3 times more than what DeKalb County had spent. Well, we spend 6 times more.
Right,
So, you know, that's a shame on us for spending more than we promised.
right. But I thought it was important to point that out. And you all are making an investment. I know that the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is still a work in progress, and I'm very proud of the community that they are engaged and are coming to the podium and are sending in comments. But you have to have a plan in order to move forward. You have to have a plan to afford your community predictability on what the improvements are going to be, but you have to budget the funds to that. And there has to be a reliance on this community as to what services, how the parks are going to be programmed, and how they're going to be managed, and most importantly, you know, how do you fully utilize those facilities that are on the ground right now? And I can tell you, those facilities that are out there right now are not enough. Just by evidence of the comments that have received, the over 1,000 people that responded to the surveys, we have a lot of work to do, but you should all be very, very proud, because the majority of the host dollars have gone to your parks and are still yet to be programmed. Every one of my department heads are waiting for this meeting to end because Public Works has POs that are waiting to be processed. The Parks Director right now has over $500,000 of improvements going to various parks to get them habitable and to be able to be used. And the brochure that we held up so proudly, that Mr. Kinsey put together in less than a month of being on board, we got to get those facilities habitable so people can get in there and they can have recreation and leisure services, and they can get in there and have gymnastics or taekwondo or the basketball season, and right on the heels. And I can tell you tomorrow morning, and I'll probably get the call on the way home from Brad Middlebrooks saying, hey, boss, can I go ahead and push that bid through on the gym at Briarwood? I know it's coming, so you don't even need to call me. I talk to him most mornings at 6 a.m., and they're about bids on the parks.
Right.
And I just want to make that point, because hooray for you, good for you, that you're willing to commit these dollars, because there are still lots of other improvements citywide that we could be using those host dollars for. You've set the priority as the parks, and I'm very proud to say that the majority of your host dollars have gone there.
There's a lot of competing interests. I mean, you got folks, some folks want more staff for tree protection and erosion control. Some folks want more. I want my street paved. I want a sidewalk here. I want more police. I want this. So our job is to manage that. That's why we're elected, is to manage that.
Right,
So
right.
Parks is one of the top 2 or 3 issues that we form the city on.
And your city manager and your staff are very well aware of the priority you place on that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think our funding allocation shows the priority we place on it.
Absolutely. And one last point about that, because I think it's important. we don't save until we spend and meet the levels of service.
Right.
And all, the almost $3 million going to parks is still affording us to put away $1.2 million in contingency.
Right.
That you now currently have $2 million in your reserve fund. And hopefully by the end of the year, another 500 to 600,000 added to that.
Right.
And let's fasten our seatbelts and look forward to 2015 because we want to grow that reserve.
Because what does the reserve allow us to do? It allows us to get bond rating.
Correct.
If you want parks improvements and you want a bond, you have to have that reserve.
Correct.
And so-
Right, or if there's a failure in one of your facilities in the parks, you'll have a savings account to go to and not ask your citizens to increase their tax contribution.
Right. Okay. All right, thank you. So the motion, that's the discussion on the motion, right? All right, so is there, all in favor of deferral, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
The next item, Mayor and Council, is an ordinance to consider and approve initiating text amendments to the